creativity and analysis roles in communication. The body represents truth. However, with creativity and free will, a soul untamed with humility and burden such as God has given us with the three aspects that soul must protect, could grow arrogant, might even ignore its own Trinity. The body aspect of brain, the physical aspect of mind, with soul, have roles to play. The brain and mind directly connected, and one does not see the brain through language of perception. You only perceive one, even if you're aware of the mind's presence within your own Trinity. While you are communicating, you will not separate the two, especially if you won't even consider the fact that a soul, the creative aspect, exists. The creative aspect is engaged in what can be called battle meditation. The mind, body, and soul must work as one, with the mind working as recorder and filter of what's necessary, while the human Trinity is under stress. In life, delegating authority is something leaders must master. And soul, your creative aspect, is leader within your Trinity. Are they a tyrant or inept? Will be demonstrated in how we treat our spouses or our family. The soul's focus on using mouth and eyes toward one goal, gaining the objective of creativity to convince others they are right. The mind has a passive role with its primary function to record and filter. In a face-to-face conversation, the ears will be its primary role, while funneling just enough of what is perceived through learned behavior to be necessary for the creative aspect of soul to complete its task. Understand, until the stress level decreases, the soul will not have the luxury to go over all the information that was exchanged. The only way the soul will seek what you've given in its entirety is when the mind and soul have time to go over the aftermath of the exercise in creativity. The eyes and mouth will be the language of perception the soul will rely on, with the hearing being the mind's role. It is the guardian of knowledge and retains all we create to draw upon when the Trinity must work as one. In communication, through text or internet, the ears are not used. The sight has only words, and it's here that you are the most blind to the ability to respond. It's where so much of this was shown to me. I engage in words and notice the nuance in the responses. So much of what I've learned is from dealing with trolls online. This decade of 2010 has been incredible in learning about narcissists and how they respond to stress. The rule of blame placed by soul is a trauma rule, and is likely the earliest use of this ability by soul in managing its domain. The younger the child, the less complex the rule becomes, allowing for unintended consequences to spiral out of control. In this case, it is the moment the soul accidentally tells the mind to focus on what others do to them. Since it is fundamentally selfish and arrogant, it will not like having itself denied what it wants. It will look for a way to get it, even though it may not be best for it. Any attempt to restrain it will be from outside. Traumas will be induced from outside. So, relying on the mind as an ally and unaware of its flawed rules, ability to cause damage in the creative process, the soul will rely on mind and might not catch when the responses from the focus of communication is not responding as soul expects. It will increasingly rely on mind to carry it through until it can take inspiration. It will be looking for a moment to bring the discussion back to its primary goal, allowing it to observe while the mind engages. How many flawed conversation has been going on that the soul was not listening to, focused only on what was being said by others, since the recording is only recording what they say. The creative aspect is not listening to this exchange. It's focused on observation of the body language that tells it if it's having an effect, as well as the eyes of the individual. Are they looking away? rolling in disgust. It's looking for uncertainty to modify its ability to attack. But if the mind is going off in its own direction, it will start to send the wrong messages, and it'll be confused. The creative aspect will be confused. The mind will only need to give enough for the soul to have some sense of what's said. This means that we will never agree until after we've had time to go over the endeavor, and since the mind is told to ignore the soul as a solution, it will not volunteer. When you sabotage your own efforts by allowing the mind to spend so much time with its damaged abilities due to your learned behavior rules, leaving the easiest solution to be the failure is theirs, since obviously they are not making sense. You're no longer leading the conversation, and so therefore you're not catching exactly how bad your learned behavior rules is confusing them. You're just getting frustrated and blaming them. Just placing one rule is not debilitating. However, over time, you will place more coping behavior as well as more extreme traumas will displace old ones that will lack the emotional and remembered intensity of the pain, but still be learned behavior. Each new trauma will have as its base the original trauma. Since it worked before, the creative aspect will start there. Only the most severe trauma will demote another trauma and thus force all trauma rules to be reassessed. This is the moment that you must disown the rule of blame. You rarely will, since it's perceived as good. The soul prefers no limits on its abilities, while it's fine with limiting others. That is the reason the mind is blinded to seeing soul's role in what others are doing. It's aware the soul is within the body, and any that agrees with it has a soul. Any that disagree must not have one. They must be bad or negative. Eventually, people will label them evil. Only the words of memory will remain once a trauma rule has been demoted. So, the child will have the most creativity, and unless you begin to remove learned behavior rules, your ability to adapt to stress will deteriorate to the point even communication will be less effective, bringing you back down to an infant with only one answer: to react, throw a tantrum. The mind must take over based on the language of behavior for longer times, while the soul is lost, trying desperately to make sense of the words the mind is giving it and the responses that are coming back. It is its primary form of communication. It was meant to be an aid, but it's reacting for longer periods of time without the soul taking the initiative. And since we don't usually listen to ourselves, it's because of what the response is from the others. They're not matching what one would have expected with the words the soul's using to respond while it's trying to work through the problem. That means the person with less access to learned behavior rules will be able to effectively compensate during the meditation of communication. Some things to look for if the learned behavior rules are strict upon encountering possibilities that run counter to their desires, it will trigger them to attack. And their attack is a sign of their weakness. How they attack will usually be three: your looks, spelling, and grammar tells you what they value. They are lashing out in the hopes of undermining your self-confidence. Since they lack knowledge of you, they will rely on what they would find most destructive. Looks is a sign they rely on their own looks to gain them what they want or uncertain of their own attractiveness. A body is their temple. Regardless of the negative or positive, it is the body they see as most valuable. In this, you see that there are at least 3 levels to each of my spectrums of 5. It's only a hint that this is a spectrum, with the attack on looks as the most restricted and how the mind functions. It is doing all the work because the feedback the soul receives is no longer providing the information needed for it to match with what it's perceiving through sight and body language. Spelling, I'd suggest, is neutral because it is not as restrictive as grammar, and it ignores the body element completely. The mind is likely the temple, but enough self-confidence in their looks to avoid a childish attack on looks to gain its goal. Grammar demonstrates the temple is the mind. They value structure, so the mind is more in control. Since it must do all the work, it's irritated when the strict communication rules are not being followed. In the true spectrum, this would be the border between predator and professional victim. Their attacks will be based on the same level, but how they use it will be the difference. In communication, the two most likely to respond will be predator and professional victim. But while they will use one of those three, it's how they use them that will help you assign a value to protect yourself from overreacting. If your focus is on limiting your ability to damage yourself, any attempt using this to damage or change them, then you just embrace blame. Since you fail to understand, they will see you as a predator in any attempt to manipulate them. That is what you would be attempting to do, even if you think it's for their own good. Knowing that you do it to another will make you aware others could do it to you. And remember, they attacked first. So they will be expecting you to do the same. This is what I talk of with insanity infecting you. It also infects them, but it will infect you if you engage in it. The mind only warns you of this when under stress. Even a person with no negative motive will be perceived by you. It could make you reject their help because you would never consider doing it without an ulterior motive. A predator will not bother addressing the value in what you're saying. The attack will be at the beginning with no admission they read it at all. Yet they were triggered to respond, so one can assume they read it. By not attacking it, they have admitted the argument couldn't be attacked. They want to avoid you causing others to take up the response by making you believe others are better able to do what you're doing. They likely are right. However, unless you see someone saying it and you feel strongly it should be said, then it's best to assume it's up to you to introduce this element into the discussion, even if it's just to introduce. Once it's out there, others can use it, and that's what the predator and professional victim will want to avoid. They have least access to adapting when changes happen. They don't want to reveal this weakness, and the more random possibilities there are will increase the risks of them being exposed and deny the goal they are attempting to get. The professional victim is both the same and the opposite from the predator. It has more access to creativity, so from them, it's likely they will start off with some kind words about your argument, then hit you with the attack, using one of those three elements of looks, speech, and grammar. It's manipulation. On one hand, they are telling you there is others out there trying to fight, while you are hindering the cause by engaging yourself. It will undermine your self-confidence, and they hope you will have the same insecurities they have. And never ignore that even in this, it is possible for you to introduce possibilities in them by how you respond. They lack the ability to adapt, or they would not have engaged as they did. If you fail to respond as they believe is likely, but you do respond, you have created possibility mind and soul must analyze for later. If you can do that, then it's possible you can reach them. The mind is on autopilot. Imagine a child hiding behind their parents for protection. After they've damaged a sibling, they only shout out back up to what the adults say. You stump the mind, forcing it to seek the creative element, then possibilities are introduced into their Trinity. Now that must be resolved. Be aware that the soul will rely on sight. So one mind rule might be to get you to react emotionally, so the soul can ignore you and dismiss you. If they value the mind and your argument can't be defended, then they must get you to discredit it in the soul's eyes, so that they don't have any work to do. All of this is the creative aspect of soul's doing. It places what is created in the mind for use later. So, how you respond is just as important as the words you speak. Engage a predator is likely not going to be informative. You can trigger them, but they've already told you they have little to offer you. If you respond, focus on introducing possibilities by adapting your response. They are expecting you to be triggered. The attack on looks would be the person I'd leave alone. They've demonstrated that they will not listen and offered you nothing to use to introduce possibilities. However, spelling and grammar are areas, if you're capable of removing the sting of the attack and admit that their criticism is welcome, you've introduced an element they were not expecting. I normally respond with, "Thank you. Criticism is welcome," followed with, "I see you had no problem with my comment since you failed to address it, and I give you credit that you wouldn't have responded unless you had a reason," implying that if they didn't agree, they would look petty, and if they did agree, now is the time to speak up. Only once has a person agreed with me. Usually they stay silent and never talk to me again. That should be a warning that not all that attack in this way are doing it because they are triggered by what you said. It could be exactly what they said. You're damaging others' ability to reach the other side. Never forget that is their opinion. After you have finished the encounter, do not forget they did offer a negative you should look at. Embrace the role of blame. You would ignore the reality. The goal is to reach others, and there is truth that spelling and grammar will often be a hindrance to the most rigid people, and they are the ones that have to be reached. At least consider that they had a point, even if it was meant as an attack. To go further with this, with professional victims, they offer more possibilities. They are also more manipulative, and they've revealed a weakness by attacking in the first exchange. So, be aware of 2 attacks when you're dealing with this type of people. And believe me, it doesn't just happen on the internet. They need you to do something. That's why they started out first giving you a compliment. That's what they do. They'll offer you a compliment to deceive you into believing they're on your side, and then give you a back slap to the face. Body slam, whatever you want to call it. So they look for ways to disable your ability to say no or undermine your self-esteem. Once they are ready, they will hit you with what they wanted from you all along. And this does happen with family members as well. If you've ever found yourself in a moment where they started out giving you compliments, and the next thing you know, you're doing something you really didn't want to do because you couldn't find out a way to get around it without sounding like a horrible person, that's why. This can be as simple as repaying a debt only to ask for money afterwards, to need you to do something you would not like, as I said. They understand you well enough to see you would not, and depending on how many times they've done this to you, they will need to manipulate more since you are on your guard. Just be aware of the past, and if you start hearing compliments, be aware that there is likely a payoff they are seeking. Information that will give them an opening that will force you to refuse without an excuse. Not everybody likes to be coming across as an arrogant, mean person to someone that they love or care about. If they need you to drive them someplace, they will seek to know what you're doing. If you're aware of this and you listen, you could get a clue what they are focused on and just give them less information, more generalized, based on what you've already been forced to do in the past through this behavior. Back to the communication of ideals and introducing possibilities. They will attack on the same three guidelines of looks, spelling, and grammar, with the same revelations. However, they also complemented your idea so you can engage, but keep in mind that those three shows high levels of learned behavior rules. There will come a time they will behave like the predator. It's when you've exhausted their ability to counter your argument. Then the mind will start repeating the old arguments. While the soul has given up, the goal is to get you to react. You've introduced possibilities. Now it's about their need for you to destroy the argument so the soul can go back to its arrogant ignorance that it's always right. As soon as you hear, or if you're online, see them respond in repetitive words, it's time to disengage. They have given you all they can, and you've done all you can. Let it go on further to change their minds. You will damage your argument, and others are likely listening. So even if you didn't reach them, you still have a chance to reach others. Their mind is recording. The information is there for the soul to seek and build, if they will. At this point, I keep my responses short. Often it's bless you or some other response that leaves them no avenue to trigger you. You should keep the focus inward. You're engaging in creativity, but what is the goal? It must be focused on exposing your ideals so they can be challenged. To strengthen them, you are planting seeds in others, but you have no idea if you're reaching them. Since you are unable to judge the effect, you might feel you've little control over your life. Reduce the focus to making your ability to communicate better, then you will realize grammar and speech are a part of that. The words might have felt like an attack. The rule of blame would make it easy to ignore the reality. Often, this is a problem. Attempt to address the problem. Don't get angry at them for pointing it out to you. I mentioned earlier, if you point out they must have liked your idea, some might agree. They did. Let me suggest this could be a sign of a broken soul at the border of entering the strong soul area. They have dealt a long time with both predator and professional victims, and understand how a person can destroy you and why they like what you said. You might make them share it, only to discover that there was this bad grammar or spelling, and thus getting them attacked. Something they get enough of. I've lived with people that will isolate you and constantly belittle you. Intelligence or looks because they don't like what you say. It can make you shut down. Even a child faces this with a rigid parent, so don't assume the predator or professional victim argument is enough to assign them a level. You need a pattern, and while broken soul and strong soul will rarely respond, they are listening. Strong soul will only respond with acknowledgement. They agree, and unless there is something you didn't add, they will do that. But otherwise, the two most encountered will be the first two. It could make you feel like you're alone. Do not forget, in their reaction, you at least know someone is listening. In responding, they've given you a chance to expand your ideals. If you're careful to avoid the traps, this is also the point that strong or broken soul might engage, taking one side or the other. You've increased the people both can reach. It is now a debate, something they did not intend. It will take time to put all this in play, but over time, if you refuse to blame, your effectiveness in countering the negative responses will get better. And be on guard for your weaknesses. The only time I'm at risk of losing control is seeing people attacking others less able to defend themselves. It's a good thing, but it will make you react, and that is all they need. It's in reacting you reveal your weakness. And that's what they're seeking all along. The moment the mind takes charge and the soul retreats until it's ready to re-engage.